Good evening, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, I thought that I would talk about this. Uh, the UFC, what is this, 257? Something like that. Or maybe it's UFC 259. I can't remember. But when it comes down to the overall, we're here to talk about, so UFC 257 right up there. But anyways, so we're here to talk about the two main events, the co-main event and the main events of UFC 257. And let me tell you something, man. I got upset both times tonight when it came to the main event. When it came to Dan Hooker versus Michael Chandler, I bet on Dan Hooker. I thought Dan Hooker was going to be too experienced, too lengthy, too big for someone like Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler got in there, and he quite frankly very much surprised me. So, very, very much congratulations to him. Very powerful puncher, very decent fighter. When it comes down to the overall, I was somewhat impressed. So I have to give Michael Chandler a hell of a lot of credit. He could be a threat to anyone possibly in that division now. Especially the Justin Gaethjes, the Dustin Poiriers, even the Conor McGregor's. Well, of course, Conor didn't look overly great tonight, so it is what it is. But anyway, so the biggest surprise of the evening to me has to be the way the main event went down between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor in the rematch. I predicted that Conor McGregor was going to win, and I thought he was going to win by knockout. I thought that a knockout was going to occur within the first two rounds. Well, a knockout very well did occur within the first two rounds. It just didn't end up on the side that I thought it was going to. Dustin Poirier ended up winning this fight by a second round TKO. And when it comes down to the overall, and sorry, you're gonna hear messages here and there because people are going crazy about the fight, and I have people texting me. But when it comes down to the overall bottom line is this: I was surprised that Dustin Poirier was able to knock him out. Now, what I'll say is this: this is probably the best version of Dustin Poirier we are going to see. Was this the best version of Conor? Well, what I'll say is this. This certainly is a Conor McGregor that probably was better than the Conor that fought Dustin Poirier the first time. Now, is this the same Conor McGregor that beat Jose Aldo or overall beats Eddie Alvarez, which was probably the best version of himself when he was up against Eddie Alvarez? Maybe not, but when it comes down to the overall, this still was a very decent version of Conor. And to be quite honest with you, I thought Conor was pretty much winning the fight. I see some people overall saying, well, Conor, all round two was downhill for him. Not really. The round one I thought was completely won by Conor. I thought that he was being more accurate. He actually looked good. I thought that he had accurate strikes. The thing that I did notice, though, is that Dustin was kicking a lot to his legs. And that's not usually something that a lot of people usually do to Conor. Now, whether you think it's because he's less maneuverable than he once was, or overall because Dustin just pulled that strategy out of his hat and overall, just came up with a better game plan is, that's your theory. But when it comes down to the overall, we do have to give Dustin Poirier credit for that because not a lot of people tend to go after Conor McGregor's legs, even though he has a very, very wide stance. I've seen it somewhat work against Conor McGregor before. It was against Eddie Alvarez, but for some reason, and I think it was because of his power and his reach, he gave up on the leg kicks very, very early. And it is what it is. But Conor does have a very, very wide stance that can get him in trouble. And this was an example of one of those fights. So Dustin was able to take advantage of that very, very well. When it came down to it, I thought Conor won the first round. The second round, I thought Conor was winning. And Dustin took him to the ground. A certain amount of these people overall say that Conor McGregor has this horrible ground game. I've never seen Conor have this horrible ground game. Like I said, he's just had the misfortune of facing some of the toughest guys on the ground in the history of the UFC. But as we've seen, Conor was able to handle himself on the ground. He was able to get back up, and he was able to somewhat handle himself in the clinch. However, one might argue that that did tire him out a little bit. And when it came down to the overall, the leg kicks in the second round, especially halfway through, right before the knockout happened, did affect Conor. when it came down to it. And I do think that it did hurt him. And I do think overall that is a part of the reason why he was kind of going back up against the cage. And then Dustin hit him with a hell of a whopping left. And like I said, Dustin Poirier, even more than Conor, Dustin Poirier is the hardest hitter in that division I'm not going to say by far, but in my opinion, he is the hardest hitter in that division. And he hits Conor with a good left, and Conor immediately is hurt, and he's trying to duck out of the way. But one of the problems with Conor, another thing overall that Dustin was able to expose, is that Conor doesn't usually keep his hands up very well. So that is one thing overall he should work on. And then, Dustin, he pretty much was backing him up. Conor was trying to ducked right down right into a right hook, and Dustin Poirier put him on his back, put him on his ass, and a couple more punches and the fight was over. And that is the first time Conor McGregor has ever been knocked out. And the day that Conor McGregor was going to be knocked out is the day that his career is pretty much over. Because when I take a look at this Conor, I'm not sure if it's the Floyd Mayweather fight and the Khabib fight, or if overall Dustin is just that powerful and that good. But the bottom line is this Conor McGregor is not going to beat a lot of the top contenders at the 155-pound division. This Conor, when it comes down to it, and sorry about that, low battery apparently, didn't check on it. But anyways, when it comes down to the overall, this Conor McGregor will not beat a lot of the top contenders at 155. Because Conor, although he is a very, very good striker, he is not as defensively responsible as certain people overall should be. Like a Dustin Poirier is very defensively responsible, even though he did get hit a certain amount of times in this fight. Even with that left hand, he was able to take him pretty well in this fight. When it came down to it, it also looks like Conor McGregor may not have that same sting in his left hand anymore, which is interesting because that was a very, very big weapon for him. And Conor, when it comes down to it, that is a part of his mystique, is that left hand. And if he doesn't have the same sting in that left hand, he's not going to be as successful. I remember when Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor fought, and a certain amount of people were saying, well, Khabib is actually more of a complete stand-up guy than Conor, because overall, when it comes down to it, he keeps his hands up, all sorts of blah, 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 blah. I understand overall what they were saying, and I don't completely disagree with them, but I'm not going to say Khabib Nurmagomedov is a more complete stand-up guy than Conor. What you can say is that he's more defensively responsible in spots. Conor McGregor's defense overall is his power and his reach and his elusiveness, but he doesn't keep his hands up very well. And Dustin was able to take advantage of that. Conor has relied on his power and his reach for so long that a lot of the times he forgets to keep his hands up. I thought Conor overall was somewhat elusive in this fight. I thought he was moving out of the way of most shots. But with a puncher like Poirier, it only takes one shot sometimes. And Conor has a very, very, very good chin. But it doesn't look like his chin is even there anymore, which does make me wonder a little bit. Is he a little bit battle damaged from the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight and also the Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight? Because to be quite honest with you, I don't think Conor McGregor has ever really looked the same again after that Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight. But it is what it is. Maybe that's just me. Either way, that's not to strip credit away from Dustin Poirier. Dustin has really grown and matured as a fighter. And apparently Max Holloway said something like he believes he has the best boxing in the UFC. No. The person overall within the 145-pound divisions and even the 170-pound divisions and 155-pound division, let me tell you something. The person that has the best boxing out of all those divisions would either be Conor McGregor or Dustin Poirier. And you can very, very much debate that as Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is a very, very, very good boxer as a UFC fighter. As a UFC fighter. I'm not saying that he would beat boxers in a boxing match, but Dustin Poirier is a very defensively responsible fighter, even though he does get hit a lot in a lot of these, smash him up fights. But when you take a look at his fights against Justin Gaethje and even Eddie Alvarez in the rematch, he gets hit here and there, but he's somewhat defensively responsible in those fights, and he starts adjusting. Do I think that it was the most impressive performance by Dustin? No, to be honest with you. I thought that he was pretty much losing the whole fight until he knocked Conor out. But, good for Dustin that he was able to tire him out with the legs and with the clinch, and he was able to catch Conor coming in. Could this fight turn out differently if there was a third fight? Maybe. But to be quite honest with you, I think Conor McGregor might as well just hang him up. I don't think he has the same, iron chin that he once did. I don't think overall that he's the same fighter that he used to be. That's not saying overall that this was not a very good version of Conor. But I don't think Conor overall is the same Conor that defeated Eddie Alvarez, that peak Conor. I don't think overall that he's that same because Conor has always had slight holes in his game, and without that much sting with the left hand, and also being able to be as elusive as he once was, which he was pretty elusive in this fight, but not as much. You know, this this looked like a little bit more of a damaged Conor, not necessarily taking away credit from Dustin, but it did. It is what it is. That being said, Dustin Poirier has turned into a great fighter. And I don't think a lot of people overall really realize how great Dustin is. When we take a look at the history books, I think Dustin Poirier, even though he has never really won the official belt in any weight class and only won the interim belt, he should be counted greater than some of the fighters overall that did win the belt. In my opinion, Dustin Poirier is a greater fighter than an Anthony Pettis in history, even though Dustin Poirier never won the belt. I believe he's a greater fighter than Eddie Alvarez. I believe he's a greater fighter than Max Holloway. And a certain amount of people say that Max Holloway is the greatest featherweight of all time. Personally, I've never seen that. it is what it is. If you had to ask me, I'd still go with Jose Aldo if you just want to go with title defenses. It is what it is. But anyway, but that's pretty much it for now. Congratulations to Mr. Dustin Poirier. What's next for both of these gentlemen? Well, personally, if I were Conor, I'd retire. Because the way that he got knocked out, his chin is never going to be the same again. And he is not going to be Justin Gaethje like that. He is not going to be Dustin Poirier in a third match like that. Overall, I'm not really even sure if he would beat a Max Holloway right now. So it is what it is. That being said, that's pretty much my commentary on it. Thank you so much for watching. As for Dustin Poirier, I'd love to see a rematch with Justin Gaethje. I'd also maybe like to see a match with Michael Chandler, as he seems to be the new kid on the block. That'd be a great fight, to see overall who the most powerful punch in that division truly is. But we'll see what happens. That's really about it for today. And also let me tell you one thing, because a certain amount of people, of course, are going to be on Conor. Conor overall does have a lot of people that don't like him. I had one of my friends overall that called him the Mike Tyson of MMA, which meant overall that he's very vastly overrated and he loses all of his big fights. Conor used to be a guy overall that used to win every one of his big fights. He beat Jose Aldo, he beat Eddie Alvarez, he beat Max Holloway a while ago, he beat a certain amount of very, very good fighters. And he also beat Nate Diaz in the rematch, So Conor has won a certain amount of very, very big fights. But it is what it is. And Poirier, Poirier overall, he is transitioning to such a great fighter. But it is what it is. But I just thought that I would say that because I know there's going to be a certain amount of people. Conor McGregor, in my opinion, when you take a look at his accomplishments, is one of the top 20, top 30 MMA fighters, or at least UFC fighters, that I've seen. But it is what it is. But anyway, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later.